Hello and welcome to another episode of the Be The Push podcast. This is the podcast where we talk to business owners, entrepreneurs and professionals about the tough times they've had to push through in their careers. So today's episode we have a special guest by the name of Toby Jenkins, who is a former Olympian and is currently the CEO of Bluewire Media. Now, Toby and I talked about a range of things, including his experience at the Olympics and some of the tough times that went along with that. Also, we almost split this episode into two sections where we talk about the business side of things that he's learned as CEO of Bluewire Media during his 12-year journey, and also what he learned as an elite athlete. But before we get into the entire discussion, let's have a little sneak peek of a concept Toby talked about or introduced me to called Negative Visualisation. I hadn't heard of it before this podcast, so have a listen and see what you think.
And part of that, I even sat down with an athlete. She was due to have an operation, and we sat down and I said, look, this might sound a bit strange, but let's just run through the absolute worst case scenario here. And, what started off as incredible anxiety around, I'm not going to be able to play, this operation might go badly, was the anxiety. And I said, well, what happens if it does go badly? Well, I may not, the recovery might take me ages. Well, what happens if you can't play again? I guess I'd go back to my physio degree. Well, what happens if your elbow's so bad that you can't do your physio degree? Well, I'd go back and I'm really passionate about helping elderly people, so I could go and talk to them. And we ran down that rabbit hole. It took us about 20 minutes. And at the end of it, it was like, wow, actually, you know what? The worst case is,
not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can still lead a life that I'm really proud of and contribute in ways that, I hadn't necessarily thought about, or as an ambiguous uncertainty of, oh gosh, this operation may not go well. Okay, I'll be okay. The realization that you will be okay, even though you will be different. I think it was, anyway. So that was a pretty powerful experience, yeah.
Negative visualization. I'm gonna remember that. Hello and welcome to the Be The Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, and I'm going to be sharing with you stories of how business owners and entrepreneurs had to push through the hard times in their careers. We're going to be discussing the lessons learned from these experiences while arming you with actionable advice so you can be the push when you need it most. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Let's get started. So we have that story coming up amongst many others in this discussion. We talk about how Toby and his co-founder Adam had to change business models very deep into their business career and deep into their business's journey, and how that came about, what made them make the decision to do that, and how they approached it from then on. Toby also has an interesting perspective on partnerships and talks about seeking discomfort in partnerships and how important he believes that is, prompted by seeing his father pack up his stuff at 22 years of age and leave the family home, which then started this fascination of Toby's to think about how partnerships work, why they break down. And we also talk about the stress of writing a book. So Toby and his co-founder Adam have written a book called Web Marketing That Works. And Toby gives us a little insight into that process and how challenging that could be. I've thought about writing a book myself at times, and this somewhat put me off it a little bit, but it was good to hear a few reality checks about the actual process itself. Now, I said that we talk about two main areas in this podcast, which is Toby as the Olympian and Toby as the business person. So before we do get into the start of the discussion, I do want to show you another little story about what Toby went through at the Olympics.
Basically, this idea that, there are positive thoughts and there are negative thoughts, and actually it's just us who label them. And so the framework is actually called acceptance and commitment, commitment therapy, sorry. And so what it's about is that if you identify positive thoughts and negative thoughts, that's just us giving them a particular thought, a label, where actually the intervention question that I've found is this thought useful to me? So if I can share a story at the Olympics, and I didn't understand this at the time, and I wish I had, but swimming down one-on-one with the goalkeeper. I've got the ball's been passed to me. There's no one around. I've got in my head, you've missed these shots all the time in training. You've missed these shots. You're not a good shooter. You're not a shooter. You're a centre forward. You're not a shooter. You know how many times you've missed this. So, don't fuck this up, mate. And then the other voice saying, "Oh, mate, you have so got this. Families in the stand. You're in front of 6,000 people, 6,000 Greeks going absolutely bonkers. It was against Greece."
Right. And plus the millions on TV.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, millions watching water polo. So super pumped about it, and then go in, balk, take the shot, and miss. And so it doesn't have a happy ending, sadly. But what I realise now is that neither of those thoughts were useful. So is this thought useful to me living, a value-driven life, which is, for me, that's mastery, curiosity, impact, love, and gratitude. If that's so what it's about is this thought useful to me living a value-driven life to accomplish what I want to accomplish? And actually neither the positive nor the negative were useful to me accomplishing the outcome that clearly I wanted to score the goal.
Yeah.
For all sorts of reasons. And it still kills me a bit.
So hopefully now you're all excited to listen to the entire discussion. You know a few of the things you're in for. Let's get started. All right, so today we're here with Toby Jenkins, CEO of Bluewire Media and former Olympian. Toby, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. It's great to be here, mate.
It's great to have you. Former Olympian, so you're the first Olympian we've had on the Be The Push podcast.
Oh, cool.
What did you do in the Olympics?
So I was in the Australian water polo team in Athens, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's pretty cool to get back to the home of the Olympics.
Yeah.
In concept and the outcome of a lifetime of dreaming really for me at that point. So it's pretty cool.
Right. So that's something you always wanted to do?
Yeah. I wrote down when I was 14, I applied for a position in what was then the intensive training centre, which was run through the Queensland Academy of Sport. And I wrote down that my goal was to play for Australia in the Olympic Games. And then...
Did you know for what sport?
Water polo, yeah, definitely.
Okay, always water polo.
I loved it.
Yep.
Fell in love with it, yep. I was a swimmer, couldn't stand the black line, got bored with it. My two sisters were playing water polo and just fell in love with a team sport, a ball sport, and it ticked all the boxes for me. It was awesome.
You'd have to be a certain type of breed to be able to do the swimming thing, I reckon. That's so boring.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So how'd you go?
We came 9th.
Right.
So, I guess ultimately somewhat disappointing, really, in terms of the outcome. It was probably about where we were ranked. We'd come 8th at the World Champs the year before.
Yep, cool. And so I'd be interested in how you got there. What type of discipline did that take to get to the Olympics?
Yeah, pretty single-minded
Right.
at times, as I said, I sort of started in year 8 at high school, had a great coach, and then I guess there's so many milestones, in fact, in terms of, but it was something that ballooned, right? Like I didn't start out thinking, oh man, geez, I want to be an Olympian.
Yeah.
It was actually, oh boy, here's a sport, man, it ticks all my boxes. And then, admittedly, it was a year or two later that I sort of wrote out this application letter that said, I wanted to go to an Olympic Games and wanted to play for Australia. And I thought it was a pretty ambitious goal, and perhaps it was something that I thought, just needed to be said on the application form as well. It turned out and it kicked off a path that it was extraordinary. Water polo is one of those sports, amateur here in Australia, obviously, but we toured the world. I played professionally in Spain in 2002, 2003. Played 3 World Championships, I think. 3 World Championships, 5 World League tournaments, and an Olympic Games as well. So
wow,
yeah, pretty amazing experience, really.
Yeah, that sounds like you need a lot of work. So
Yeah.
So what did it look like in terms of training? Like, did you guys have to train every day for years, or?
Yep.
Right.
Pretty much.
Every day?
Yeah. Oh, just about. I mean, we were doing 13 sessions a week or thereabouts. And depending on what sort of period you were in a given cycle of training, you were training a whole lot more or a whole lot less. But yeah, I mean, there's sort of 4 components loosely of water polo. There's, in terms of the training anyway, there was the gym, swimming, ball skills, and then gameplay as well. So, to work your way through in the volume that needed to be worked through, it was a lot, high volume and really pretty high intensity too. It's a pretty demanding game.
Wow. So was Athens the last time you played water polo, or did you keep doing it after that?
No, I kept playing. So I played another World Championships in 2005 in Montreal, and then I missed out on the team in 2006 for a Commonwealth Championship, and then I kept playing National League here in Australia for another 4 or 5 years. Actually, it might have been longer than that even. But it was sort of 20 years or 21 years of water polo from when I started in Year 8 to when I pulled out of the National League and had to have a knee operation, then had to have a shoulder operation and stuff as well.
Right.
So it's been... I'm not yet physically well enough to get back and throw a ball. But that's the aspiration.
So you had the knee injury and the shoulder injury from the sport?
I think the shoulder was originally playing rugby at high school. And then
that'll do it.
Yeah. Partially dislocated it, and then played 15 years of throwing a ball as hard as I possibly could over the top of that. And so I had that operation last year, and then the knee was actually because I dislocated my kneecap snowboarding over in Japan. So that was heaps of fun, but a bit of a rookie as well.
You wouldn't need your knees too much in water polo, though, would you?
You do actually, because you're egg beating the whole time. So
of course,
you definitely need your knees.
Cool. All right, so you then went on to work, become the CEO of Bluewire Media, so marketing company. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, online marketing company. We kicked off in 2005. So actually it was when, so there was a bit of overlap with water polo, and Adam and I love the story that we sort of signed up the business on the 7th of January in 2005 and then went surfing for a week because we figured we were now business owners.
And it all just
and we
happens,
could do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And so, but it enabled, it actually, one of the things finishing up after Athens was I was wondering what would actually take the passion and intensity and focus that I applied to water polo. What was going to fill that void? And I, to be honest, I didn't really think that business would, but it absolutely has. And I've loved that part of it. And it's something that I'm naturally drawn to. Is that, I guess, the discipline and work ethic and the learning curve as well is just really addictive, I find, in business.
Right. Yeah, that's a fair statement. I do want to go back to the part where you said, well, we're business owners now, we can do whatever we want. Because I had the same perception, right? Let's just do this business thing, don't work for someone else. I'll work a few hours a week, but not gonna push myself too hard, I'll live a good lifestyle, make a lot of money. The reality was a bit different to that.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys found?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that we thought as well, though, was that we could go back and study. We could jump into jobs. We both had job offers at the time. I was looking at a finance career. Adam was looking at pharmaceutical. He'd done science at university, and pharma was sort of calling for him, sales and all that sort of stuff.
And Adam's your co-founder, right?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, Adam Franklin, co-founder and friend of 31 years, actually.
Right.
So we've done primary school, high school, university, now 12 years of business together. So it's been...
You know each other well.
There's not too much we don't know about each other.
Right.
Which has been super cool and an amazing experience, really, to be able to share all that with one of your best mates. So, but I think part of jumping into business was absolutely the thought that, well, we could either pay for an education or we could jump in and do it and learn it as we go. And I think, that's sort of been our philosophy from day one, really, was... Let's figure it out. Let's learn it, do it, and apply it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Because you don't ever really know it all anyway, do you?
No chance.
So,
Not a chance.
I can definitely relate to that philosophy. Yeah, awesome. So, you go, snowboarding after, is that what you said, snowboarding after you started a business, or you went?
Yeah, that was after the business actually. So that was in 2008 that I did the snowboard. Oh, sorry, you mean the surfing? Immediately
surfing,
after?
sorry, yeah.
Yep.
What then? Well, you come back and you actually have to start running this thing?
Yeah.
How'd you start off?
Yeah, exactly. So we started off door knocking. So it didn't take us too long to figure out that wasn't a great strategy. It was pretty funny actually. We the day that we gave up the door knocking piece, we were going around sort of the local Brisbane commercial centres, I guess, suburban commercial centres, and we walked into a cafe and we'd been practicing and rehearsing our sort of sales pitch and what have you, and so Adam had done the previous one and I'd gone into the next one and introduced I said, "Oh, hi, my name's Adam and this is Toby," and I'd just purely like sticking to the script far too much, and we just burst into laughter and walked out. And that was the point at which we realised that this wasn't a particularly efficient way of doing it. And then, escalated onto the phones, and then, working our way through the yellow pages. It all sounds so cliched, but then realised that, yellow pages probably wasn't a great place to start either. So we learnt, we moved to the Brisbane News and started calling businesses that were already advertising, that we knew were already spending money. And then, but I mean, it was all on the back. It's all been bootstrapped and all on the back of sales that we were able to make. And, we had contractors working for us at the time who were speculating, doing speckies for us as well. Look, if we get this, you give us a upfront design for a website, give us just the homepage, we'll go sell it, and then we'll pay you. Right. And so they were mates in sort of the same age and stage of their careers as well, so prepared to take a few speckies on the way.
Right. So what made you think to door knock? Because, I mean, that sounds, for someone like me, that sounds really, really out there. Like, I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't think I'd be able to do it. I'd just walking into, a cafe or something, and I'd feel like I'm annoying someone.
Yeah, and I think that was part of why we sort of quickly realised that it wasn't a great strategy, really. It was an interruption, and we were yet another person, really. And I guess it predated any understanding that we had of web marketing, actually. So the irony was that, we were selling the web and the opportunity of the web, and yet we were door knocking. Yeah. And so there's a few inherent paradoxes there that needed to be solved. Yeah. And so, we gradually sort of wrapped our head around how we would progress the business, in other ways. But I mean, it's pretty tough. It was a good lesson in rejection handling. Yeah, right. That's about it.
What about why marketing?
Good question.
Because you've said before finance and pharmaceuticals and whatnot you guys were thinking about, but okay, let's not do that. Let's do the marketing thing. How come?
Well, there are probably a couple of things. Ads was right into marketing. He'd done a lot of promotions and marketing and stuff around the world, in fact. It was more actually driven by what is the lowest cost startup that we can start.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. So at its essence, so we had 5 ideas. The other 4 required money. So one was, for example, was a bungee trampoline that we thought we could get a bungee tramp, set it up in South Bank. But, in the interest of learning the ropes and skill of business, then we figured actually, zero was a good starting point in terms of investment required. And so, we were fortunate enough to be able to use our parents' computers and all that sort of stuff. And then gradually we were able to afford our own laptop, and away we went. So, it was very much a matter of what's going to be the lowest entry point. And also, I mean, we did say at one point, look, I don't think this web thing is going to go away. We were pretty smart.
Right, yeah, definitely.
Oh, my goodness. It's hilarious looking back at it.
Did you think to yourself, marketing something you can learn? Because I mean, I've been marketing for a while now, and it doesn't, like, I thought that in the beginning, it's just marketing, I'll be able to do that, no worries. It does annoy me a bit now, though, once I kind of have learned the game a bit, and it's not just simple, and it's not just posting something on social and hoping for the best. Did you guys think, this marketing thing, we'll be able to nail this easy? Did you think it was easier than what it perhaps is?
Look, I think I personally, I thought business was easier than what it is.
Yeah.
And I went into, and I think we didn't go in as marketers either. We went in as saying, okay, well, we're building and selling websites.
Gotcha.
And then we realised that websites on their own didn't do much, and that was where, and that realisation triggered a whole bunch of decisions around, okay, well, websites need hosting, so let's be a hosting provider. Websites, we really should be email marketing, so let's be an email marketing reseller. We need to, and so it was this really additive effect of actually how do you market a website, and because of that, and because of where our service offering was growing and our gradual increasing understanding, I guess, of what it actually required to have an impact on a business, that was where we realised that I guess we needed. I mean, we're obviously interested in marketing because that's a core function of any business, but to coordinate that and make it work from a web standpoint, that was where we were, reading voraciously, super curious to see what worked and what didn't. How could you sell things online? How could you just drive leads? How do you build community? All that sort of stuff. And, it's evolved so much over time.
And so how long has it been around now?
12 years now.
12 years.
12 and a bit years, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
have you had some tough experiences along the way?
Plenty.
Yeah. Got any stories for us?
Yeah, sure have. So, I guess in prep for today, I thought I'd share one of really the pivotal moments for us later on in the business. So, I mean, there's plenty of tough stories around, just flat out rejection and that sort of thing in the early days.
How did you deal? Were you okay to deal with that? Are you the type of person that doesn't bother, or do you take that type of thing to heart, or did you take that type of thing to heart?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a day on the phone trying to drum up business, it's depressing.
Oh, it sucks, doesn't it?
And actually, a big part of what drove our marketing learning, I feel, is, there's got to be a better way of marketing than suffering rejection after rejection after rejection. The pain builds up and builds up and builds up to such an extent that, we just started reading everything we could to try to figure out how we could do this better than we had previously. And hence flipped the business right around in terms of the lead generation and inbound marketing and some of those philosophies that we came across, attraction marketing, and all of which is about being generous first, giving away the best of what you know. So then, but perhaps not all of what you know, but the lion's share of it, some of those principles that we've sort of really come to understand, and to me, work better online than perhaps anywhere else. It's really hard to give something away on every phone call because you're still just one-on-one, whereas the web just gives you incredible leverage.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I haven't thought about it like that before.
Yeah, so I mean, it was born from the pain of rejection, definitely, was that interest, and then that, and the whole business has been driven around chasing down that part of it. But I mean, so that was certainly the early days. But I think, from a real business standpoint, getting back to your point around the, what's been a painful experience. So there was one particular incident towards the end of 2013. So we'd been going a fair while at this point. We'd moved, through lots of lumpy cycles of, lots of project work, and how do you manage the cash flow, and how do you manage staff and employees and contractors and all that sort of thing. But this one point, we had a couple of clients delay retainers and delay projects, and it basically left us with, the runway was looking dry, basically. Right. The age-old cash flow issue. Your profit and everything else is all nice, but it's all about cash at the end of the day. And so that was the catalyst for it, the trigger for it. The implication for us was that we didn't have the cash, and what were we going to do about that? And there were lots of different options, I guess. We could go looking for funding. We could, there were ways around it. But what it really, actually 2 days prior to sort of that realisation, we'd gone along to the Tim Ferriss event in Sydney.
Okay.
That was a ripper, and one of his questions he sort of presented from the standpoint of 13 questions that have changed his life.
Right.
And so for us, one of those was, what happens if I do 48 hours? For 48 hours, what happens if I do the opposite to what I'm currently doing? And the other was, what do I spend my money, my personal money on, without thinking or not being concerned about the price? So what am I least price sensitive about?
Right. Yep.
And so the sort of convergence of those two was, what if we stopped the agency clearly wasn't working the way we wanted it to work. So what if we stopped employing people and flipped it around, moved to a distributed team, much more a contractor model? What would happen in that instance? And in fact, we'd been experimenting. We were in the process of planning to shut down our office just to have a fully remote working team as an experiment anyway. So it actually wasn't too big a leap for us. And then, I guess the other part of that was, what would be the new business model that we committed to? And so we went back through the things that we were most passionate about. What were we most interested in? Where did we see the assets in the business? And a couple of those were, one, our subscriber list, and two was, we'd been consulting around this stuff and teaching this stuff to private clients for nearly a decade. So how could we change that to be something that, how might that be bundled? How might that be repackaged? How could we sell a product? Online training obviously leaps to mind, and education being the name of the game. And for us, that became once we sort of made that realization, we then, it was a really interesting time actually, because I think for Ads and I, we'd always envisaged the day that we had to, part of that process obviously is letting staff go. And the day that had to happen was the day that we had failed, was what was in our head.
Right.
So we had to, but what we came to realise was, in fact, we were able to manage that. We actually helped our staff get roles elsewhere. We'd built up a team of real A players at that point and got really good at hiring great people. So super easy to find them roles. We helped a couple of them start their own businesses as well.
Nice.
And so really positive outcomes for them. And then on the other side, the client side, we finished off obligations that we had with clients. We made sure, we obviously knew a network of people who could help support those clients ongoing. And so we were able to sort of migrate and hand over those clients to other agencies and people who were more, getting the enjoyment or making that model work for them. So that left us really with the education piece. And an incredibly stressful sort of week from, and mind you, there's the build up. You're always checking cash flow. You know what the risks are or what happens if.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
If the ship doesn't turn around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if we don't close this deal, or if we don't close that retainer, or if this project gets delayed, then we're going to be in a tricky spot. And you have that cash vice that is like a feeling like no other. That just really forces super stressful time, but equally an incredible decision clarifier, I think.
Yeah, I was about to ask, do you think you needed that difficulty to turn things around and maybe, it sounds like, make the business more enjoyable for yourselves, really?
Dramatically so, yeah. I think so, yeah. I mean, it's a nice feeling to have cash coming in the door from retainers, and you win a big project and suddenly you've got a nice cash bundle there waiting for you, and you can sort of go through that roller coaster up and down, up and down, up and down without really the next one means maybe there'll be more, and so you can get a bit addicted to the model, I think, which is dangerous obviously. So yeah, in some ways, that was a pivotal point, and yeah, you just make the most of those decisions that you have to make. And I think absolutely, it's been a model that we're much more passionate about and engaged by. And it's the opportunity, it scales, the online training stuff scales, the subscribers, we can have an impact on far more people that way. You can actually scale your impact in a way that an agency is quite restricted by. So
yeah. Do you find that people are a lot more, with the new model, are people a lot more, what's the word, grateful, I suppose, for what you do? Are they more appreciative? Or is that something that didn't change?
Look, in some ways, I think one of the realizations for us around marketing was, giving away templates and that sort of stuff, and the web strategy planning template or the SEO planning template, and these sorts of things we found suddenly brought in a whole lot of business for us and marketing leads and all that sort of stuff. And I think they were always appreciated. The catch in an agency model is taking someone who downloads a web strategy planning template, and in fact, they had been instrumental in us winning business. Like literally, we had probably our biggest client ever, who then moved on to our biggest client ever subsequently.
Right, yeah.
He said, it's because of your IP that I chose you guys over anyone else, and the templates that you give away. So it was absolutely influential to winning those deals, but at the same time, there's quite a disconnect from someone who downloads a template, and in some ways that's someone who wants to do it for themselves, as opposed to running an agency and running a marketing program and strategy and all that sort of stuff for publicly listed companies, for instance. So I feel like I've got off topic on the question.
No, that's cool. Okay, so there's a whole lot I want to talk about within that, but the first thing that comes to mind, I suppose, is those questions that you had, and so those, Tim Ferriss's event was what triggered all that. Yeah,
well, I think it was just one of those instances where you've got the sort of the right questions up your sleeve, and really recently that help you actually overcome the immediate challenge.
And how long was that process for you guys to actually talk about those questions, sound them out, and make a decision on it? Was this quick? Was this a day, or was this a few weeks it took you to go, yeah, actually, let's go with this?
I think we'd been feeling the crunch like for a couple of weeks,
right?
Knowing that there was some delays coming up, and slowness of response from clients and what have you, and then, but in the end, it was it's a relatively straightforward decision when cash is a problem. It's a simple decision, but doesn't make it easy. So it was probably a day or two of, okay, we have to do something, and really what we had to do was actually pretty clear. What we did next was the bit that was a bit less clear, and I reckon that probably took us a day or two to hash out what we needed to do next.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I think in a lot of ways, the business had been evolving. We'd developed the IP, we'd built the templates. We'd actually started with the team developing an online training course for social media, and that was one of the realizations was, well, let's stop trying to make that perfect, and let's package it up and sell it right now. And so it dramatic, again, the pressure forces the decision and helps you to uncover, I guess, what is already there, as opposed to, it actually wasn't about creativity. It was far less about creativity, much more about cutting away what wasn't working and trying to find what was left.
Yeah, right. Classic 80-20.
Yeah, more like 97-3.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay, so you talk about the simple but difficult decision you then had to make. I'd be interested, because my experience in business is that it does make you grow in a way that you have to make decisions like that. I mean, before I got into business, I could cruise, really. I didn't have to make hard decisions. I didn't have to make uncomfortable decisions. I could, and I probably should have been, but you can get by, right? But in business, you have those times where, no, you've got to make a hard decision and there's no getting around it. Did you consider that, did that help you grow, like as a person?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think one of the things, again, so much of it was built in around our own fear of we'd painted that as our failure point.
Yeah.
You know, in our own minds, so many times that we were terrified of it. And in fact, you know, much more so now, I think, than ever before, Ads and I both go looking for what is the most uncomfortable for us at the moment, because the discomfort is actually that's the path to growth. And, you know, I've subsequently run right down the rabbit hole of Stoic philosophy.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of other things, you know, martial arts, Japanese philosophy, you know, art of war, all that sort of stuff. I find really interesting because to me it's a reflection on, you know, some fundamentals of humanity. But around the decision making, I think if you can tie it back and you can make a decision and still be in keeping with who you want to be as well. And I think that was a really important part for us, is like, okay, well, now we have to make this decision. How are we going to make sure that it's consistent with who we want to be? How do we maintain the relationships? Because, I mean, we could easily have just gone, right, shut it all off and
you're all
good
fired.
luck.
Go away. Yeah.
Good luck, guys, and good luck, clients, you know. But, I don't know how easy that would have been. But, you know, we didn't go down that path specifically because under that sort of, to me, maintaining your sort of sense of self in those circumstances is the bit that requires the cool head. And I'd had a mentor at another time when we were crunched, except this time with a tax bill and a $30,000 data over usage bill from a telco.
Oh, right. Wow. So
and
internet and
and
it
it was,
phone and
it wasn't and same deal, except we were able to. It was, I don't know what that stemmed from in the end, but ultimately the mentor said to me, "Look, Toby, this is like water polo. When the pressure turns up, you just got to. It's the people with the cool heads that prevail. So calm down. It's okay. You know, let's think it through." And because at that point I was super upset as well. But anyway, so again, you know, experienced words from someone who's done it all before and seen it all before helps a ton in those circumstances too.
Right, and that was important to you, having a mentor? Was
Definitely.
that critical? Right, okay.
Yeah.
Should everyone get a mentor?
Yeah, look, I think I've made a habit of it over water polo business school, in fact, whereby to me, and in fact I wrote about this for a book by Kevin Cruz called 15 Time Management Secrets of Entrepreneurs and Olympians and Billionaires. I wasn't a billionaire, sadly, but I was an Olympian and entrepreneur. But one of those things for me is that actually time management is irrelevant if you're far better spending your time identifying your problem, find the person best suited to solve that problem with you, or who's been through it all before or been there, done that, and then those are the people who will accelerate. You know, you can save decades that way.
Yeah.
And so, so mentors are something that we actively sought out from day one in business. You know, people that we knew in business who were much better at it than us. And we've maintained that
right
since.
And did you always have that type of humility? Because I reckon that's probably one of my weaknesses is I feel guilty asking people for help and for advice and whatnot if I'm not providing them anything.
Yeah, look, it's interesting actually. I sort of recognise this pattern reflecting at a water polo. It was actually at a school speech, was what it was. Reflecting over my process, from everywhere from, in Maths B, sitting, asking the teacher to come in for half an hour before school to help me through it. And then again in water polo, finding the best centre forward coach in town that I could find, and and best strength coach, like you don't go to the guy who's the skinny strength coach. You go to the guy who put on 25 kilos in a couple of years that I knew and said, help me. And on reflection, it does seem a bit cheeky, but I think each and every time I've really tried to demonstrate the gift back, I guess, is actually the action taken from the advice.
Yep.
But I don't quite know why I started asking the question, or maybe it was just,
maybe you just didn't think about it. That's probably good.
Maybe I didn't. Yeah.
Maybe you just did it.
Just did it.
Yeah.
And asked and saw what came back and probably just had it reinforced by lovely people. I mean, part of that is also to find someone who aligns on a values level with you. I think, whose work you respect and admire, and the way they go about it needs to be consistent with who you are. I think that's a crucial part of asking anyone for advice. Otherwise, yeah. But yeah, ultimately, I think, and certainly having been on the other side of those relationships now in different contexts, it's joyous if you give some advice and you watch someone put it in and put it into practice and make it their own. That's
but frustrating as all hell if they don't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that relationship doesn't continue if they don't. It's almost as simple as that.
Yeah.
Is that if you So
there are a few of those people around, though.
Yes, absolutely.
The ones that, I think there is a lot of people who like the idea of owning a business, or like the idea of being an entrepreneur, and kind of just want to feel like they're on their journey, and they ask advice, and they've got all the theory and that. But when it comes time to actually doing something, a few of them won't do anything. And it's almost always, I find, that point where they have to risk something. Like, so it might be, okay, now it's time to actually talk to a potential customer or a potential client or someone like that, where, all of a sudden you've got to put something on the line.
Yep.
And I related this to, business is tough in a way that, you have to fail in front of someone a lot of the time if you're trying to get work.
So true.
But I mean, for example,
you should quote yourself on that, Jack.
Okay.
That can be the Insta post from this, mate.
We'll do. But like, if I compare that to singing, for example, like I learned to sing, but I could be rubbish for 2 years in my room and no one would know, and I could just do that. And, it didn't really, it didn't feel like I was risking anything because no one knew how bad I was. But, when you're pitching for work or, doing that part in business where you do actually have to kind of sacrifice some, I suppose, pride or emotion. I don't know what you'd call it.
It's a great point. I mean, I think, Seth talks about it a lot in terms of the context of
Seth Godin.
Yes.
Is that? Yep.
Yeah. So he talks about a lot in terms of, the idea meeting the market. If you don't have a market, you can be a genius. You can have the beautiful process, you can have the beautiful, whatever it might be, voice in your own head, in your own ears. But, when the market hears, the market will tell you pretty quickly whether you're on point or not, or whether you're on key or not. And I think, I think that to me is, a reason why, processes like agile processes, and whether that's sort of agile project management or agile marketing or that sort of stuff of how do you get something to market to see what the market actually thinks versus what you think they think. That sort of stuff has been really interesting to me.
And actually, now you bring that up, like I was just talking to someone the other day about they wanted to know what I think of. I've made a couple of apps in my time. None of them did any good, but I kind of know the process now. And it was funny that they kind of wanted to know how to do it, and they liked the idea of doing it. But as soon as it came to actually, I said the first thing you should do is you probably go and you could do what they were doing manually, almost.
Right.
So I was, well, why don't you just try and do it manually a few times for some people and see if they'll pay for it, before you scale it, with an app. And that's when the emails stopped coming back.
Sage advice though, mate. I think that's right on point. Yeah, I mean, if you can test it, in some way, some meaningful way, then that's just, and there's nothing nothing quite like making someone pay for it.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to, hey, as opposed to asking, hey, would you buy this? They're two very, very different things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand too, just moving on from that point, that you are, you're a big believer in partnerships. Can you talk about that for us?
Yeah, sure. So so one of the things that's fascinated me, I guess, and we're talking about tough moments here, push moments, and stems back to I was 22 years old. I helped my father pack up his clothes into a washing basket, put them in the car, and the day that, and then he drove off down the drive, and that was the last time he set foot in the family home.
Oh wow.
And it was also the time when, for me, I sort of my preconceptions of partnership and obviously in this context marriage just sort of dissolved. But also, again, the time for me that I really feel like that sparked my curiosity around what is a good partnership, like what makes it work, why does some work and why does some not?
That's such a good question. That's such a good question. My parents divorced. They were roughly about the same age, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's fascinated me ever since, really, in all sorts of contexts. And I feel incredibly fortunate to have Ads and I, friends for 31 years, and 12 of those in business. And certainly one of the in the business context, our mentors again said, "Guys, are you sure you want to go into partnership?" A lot of partnerships break, and then a lot of friendships break as a result.
I can definitely attest to that.
Yeah, right.
I've had that happen a couple of times. So yeah, I often say that. But what did make it work for you guys then?
Look, I think there's a couple of things, and one is I think we sort of made this handshake initially when that was the feedback. Well, a couple of things. One was, well, at least we trust each other and know each other. There was a deep history of friendship there, so surely that's better than going into business with a stranger. We sort of had a handshake that the friendship came first, and we took that back to the mentors, and they said, "Oh, yeah, that's all well and good." But what I now realise is actually a really great piece of advice. One of them said, "Oh, look, you need to go into think through the 4 Ds." So think through your divorce agreement, and that is what happens in the event of death, what happens in the event of disability, what happens in the event of disagreement, and what happens in the event of departure. So how are you guys going to manage that? And they said, now is the time to think that through. When you're positive, enthusiastic, how are you going to manage that process? Much more so than what is the actual outcome, but because you won't hit all the outcomes. But what's the process going to look like that you can both agree on right now for that? And super, super useful exercise. That still sits on our Google Drive. Not that it was at the time; it was on a server somewhere, but it's now on Google Drive as a record of how we're going to manage each of those things. And again, for instance, in disagreement, we both appointed a mentor that we would go to if we had disagreements, and take their advice and then make a decision from there. And yeah, I think that was one piece that. So negative visualization to me is really useful. And in fact, reflecting again on my water polo career, I wish I'd spent more time on negative visualization. Like, there's so much about think positive. What can you do? But actually what it's, again, if you think of great entrepreneurs too, like your Bransons and what have you, a lot of what they did was, how do I minimize risk? And to me, that's what this is about, is if you visualize what the worst case looks like, then you've got the chance to maximize the opportunity that could come out of it. And so in water polo, I wish, I had, the day I arrived in the Olympic Village, I thought I had a tummy bug, had diarrhea.
Wow. And
the day after the closing ceremony, as soon as I left the village, finished. It was entirely stress related.
Right.
And I just think, man, like 101, come on, pull the guy aside and pull the whole team aside and say, guys, here's some possible things that you can expect under high pressure situations when you're really stressed. Even if you don't feel stressed, chances are there's a fair bit running through the subconscious.
Yeah.
And so, they talk about the Olympic circus, and I mean, that's absolutely true. And instead it influenced decisions. Instead of training like I would normally train, I actually pulled myself out of training because I was worried that I was just going to get more sick. But all it needed was a healthy dose of, here's all the things that can go wrong. Here's how we're going to manage them, and you'll be okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I just think it's a super powerful mechanism for actually dealing with things as best you can in advance, and at least having processes in place. And of course, you're never going to get everything.
No.
But, you'll get the lion's share, I reckon.
But how did you get through that then? Because you would have had to play, right, with those issues.
I just ate normally, and I just continued to, I just didn't eat for a couple of hours before a game, or, I'd go light on the food before a game, and then try to fuel up afterwards in advance of, we had 2 days between games, so we had sort of a bit of buffer there. But yeah, so, and as I say, like in hindsight, it's so simple, and really could have been addressed.
I'd be interested, were you annoyed? Because this is your childhood dream, right? And you're sick.
Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to be playing water polo you are playing water polo for Australia, but the sick thing wasn't part of the plan.
No, that's right. Yeah. And it's completely foreseeable. That's the bit that annoys me now.
Yeah, right.
And hence why I think, the negative visualization piece is so useful.
Yeah.
Because, it's, you'll be okay. And actually, I've even found it. So I've spent the last 4 months with, out in the personal development team at the Queensland Academy of Sport, just as a contract and opportunity came up, and it was too good to refuse. And part of that, I even sat down with an athlete. She was due to have an operation, and we sat down and I said, look, this might sound a bit strange, but let's just run through the absolute worst case scenario here. And, what started off as incredible anxiety around, I'm not going to be able to play, this operation might go badly, was the anxiety. And I said, well, what happens if it does go badly? Well, I may not, the recovery might take me ages. Well, what happens if you can't play again? Well, geez, that'd be, I guess I'd go back to my physio degree. Well, what happens if your elbow's so bad that you can't do your physio degree? Well, I'd go back and I'm really passionate about helping elderly people, so I could go and talk to them. And we ran down that rabbit hole. It took us about 20 minutes. And at the end of it, it was like, wow, actually, you know what? The worst case is,
not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can still lead a life that I'm really proud of and contribute in ways that, I hadn't necessarily thought about, or as an ambiguous uncertainty of, oh gosh, this operation may not go well. Okay, I'll be okay. The realization that you will be okay, even though you will be different. I think it was, anyway. So that was a pretty powerful experience. Yeah.
Negative visualization. I'm gonna remember that, because that sounds. I think that I probably don't do that enough. I can get on the hamster wheel at times, and I'm not sure if you guys felt like that a bit towards the end of the agency, because that's what I was thinking as you're telling me that. I was like, just get on the hamster wheel, it's chaos, and you just stay in the chaos, right?
Yeah, and you do.
And you don't take that step back and go, okay, so what's actually going on here? What's the worst things can happen? Because, when I'm in that state myself, I am stressed, so it's not, I've got to... it's what I need to do, is to do those exercises you're talking about. But
I think as well, to me, that's the benefit of a partnership.
Yeah,
I feel so fortunate to have had ads, because through those times, it's a counterpoint, and frequently you're going through your roller coaster and you share the highs, and someone's up a little bit more on a given day and someone's feeling a bit flat, and you're sort of working together to sort of figure out how that works, or work through, the stress pit, the chaos.
Yeah.
And having someone there with you helps enormously.
Right.
Which is why, that's a huge benefit to having the partnership. But I think, there are, and I guess there are, that whole sort of sense of chasing discomfort in a partnership as well. Ads and I do 90-day check-ins with one another.
Right. Which,
even after 12 years of business and 31 years of friendship, make me squirm. Like, I sweat. Yeah. And I know Ads does too. And we call it the hot seat, because we review each other's performance.
Yep.
What should you stop doing? What should you start doing? What should you continue doing? Super simple framework.
Right.
But, if you're doing that every 90 days, then
powerful.
Really powerful. You bring up issues early. And actually the other part is, like, not only does it bring up issues earlier, then, you know, doesn't go longer than 90 days typically, then you actually know that an issue can be addressed in 30 days or in 60 days. So it actually gives you a cooling off period as well. So the routine cuts both ways. Yeah. Which I think has been a sort of a powerful reflection as well of that particular process too. So hot seating each other every 90 days.
Yeah, because you'd know it's coming up. So you'd be like, I want this to change, but at least we're going to actually get to talk about it, you know. And
there's allocated time.
Yeah. And I think that's a part of the problem I had with the partnerships I had, is we didn't have anything like that, and I'm terrible at giving up control. You know, just terrible. Such a control freak, and you know, I didn't know that until I started trying to work with people, and we couldn't work together, and I was like, it's because I want everything my way. So yeah, I respect the humble, you know, ness that you must have to work in a partnership as well. You know, I suppose you have to compromise at times, and
absolutely, yeah. And the other part to me is that, as I say, like, the seeking of the discomfort in the partnership is actually where you're doing your best work. So again, a story that I've told recently is, you know, when we wrote the book, so Web Marketing That Works, which we wrote, actually it was just after that time of, you know, shutting down the agency and focusing on the education business. Was like, oh wow, we spent 3 weeks, we'd been writing the book, we had 70,000 words, we'd sent that to an editor, the editor came back and had tightened it up dramatically, thank goodness, from sort of what was pretty embarrassing to something that we could actually work with.
Right.
And then we spent 3 weeks going through every sentence together.
Wow.
And it was a brutal process.
Yeah.
Brutal. But without a doubt, the book was orders of magnitude better with that discomfort and tension. I mean, the tension in the room was like, it was palpable. I mean, Ads and I, it was like, okay, mate, I think we might need to reconvene tomorrow. I guess, you know, it takes a bit of, we're lucky enough to have enough trust in each other too to know when to pull the pin.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll have to highlight that paragraph and we'll revisit that. But it was at times brutal. Yeah.
The blood's starting to boil or simmer.
Yeah.
Just starting to simmer. Let's not let it boil.
Yeah. We got to go for a swim or have some food or just try a different chapter or something.
Oh, nice. Oh, these have been awesome stories. We're going to have to wrap it up in a minute, but I ask this every podcast, and I'd be interested in getting, especially considering your experience and career, what's your relationship like with self-doubt?
Oh, there are mountains of it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. It's really interesting, actually. I think it's taken a long time to realise, and quite a bit of reflection around realising that the self-doubt shows up when it matters to me, whatever that outcome is. So it might be, you know, whether it's a conversation with my wife or a conversation with Ads or a business decision that needs to be made. The self-doubt rears its ugly head. And interestingly, again, recently out at the Queensland Academy of Sport, I happened to be able to share a ride with an old mate of mine who's since become one of the top sports psychologists in the country, Jonah Oliver, and he and I were tripping up and down the coast and sharing war stories and some of what he does around that piece. And it's something I've really taken on board. But basically this idea that, you know, there are positive thoughts and there are negative thoughts, and actually it's just us who label them. And so the framework is actually called acceptance and commitment, commitment therapy, sorry. And so what it's about is that if you identify positive thoughts and negative thoughts, that's just us giving them a particular thought a label, where actually the intervention question that I found is this thought useful to me? So if I can share a story at the Olympics, and I didn't understand this at the time, and I wish I had, but swimming down one-on-one with the goalkeeper. I've got, the ball's been passed to me. There's no one around. I've got in my head, you've missed these shots all the time in training. You've missed these shots. You're not a good shooter. You're not a shooter. You're a centre forward. You're not a shooter. You know how many times you've missed this. So, don't fuck this up, mate. And then the other voice saying, "Oh, mate, you have so got this. Families in the stand. You're in front of 6,000 people, 6,000 Greeks going absolutely bonkers. It was against Greece."
Right. And plus the millions on TV.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, millions watching water polo. So super pumped about it, and then, go in, balk, take the shot, and miss. And so it doesn't have a happy ending, sadly. But what I realise now is that neither of those thoughts were useful. So is this thought useful to me living, a value-driven life, which is, for me, that's mastery, curiosity, impact, love, and gratitude. If that's sort of, so what it's about is this thought useful to me living a value-driven life to accomplish what I want to accomplish? And actually, neither the positive nor the negative were useful to me accomplishing the outcome that clearly I wanted to score the goal.
Yeah.
For all sorts of reasons. And it still kills me a bit. But so self-doubt, I'm now grouping in with unhelpful positive thought as well. So, the flip side of self-doubt is overconfidence, right? Or arrogance.
Arrogance, yeah.
And yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so neither is useful. And so, I guess I continue the practice of trying to identify it as self-doubt or overconfidence, and trying to separate those thoughts from what is actually going to help me and be useful to me living the life I want to lead.
And what do you think would have been the right thing to be thinking while you are swimming up the court to get that goal? Because you've said all this, and I'm thinking, well, what would it have been then? What do you think you should have been thinking or saying to yourself, or what would have been useful?
So what would have been useful is probably to have done the negative/positive visualization of, okay, well, what are you doing? What's the instance? What if you're the guy who's going to win, who's got the ball for the gold medal shot? Think through those scenarios, or and then what is your plan going to be if that happens? So the focus then becomes on the process. It's on the plan. Okay, so I go up to the goalkeeper, I drop my legs, I pick up the ball from underneath, I don't go too close, I pull up on the 2 metre, I balk once, watch where he goes, I balk a second time, watch where he goes, I balk a third time, and then release the ball. Like that's the process that, okay, that's balk number 1, balk number 2, balk number 3, shoot.
And if you had been prepared, you would have been able to execute that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it requires, and that to me is actually, that's the real, that's where you're getting down to the minutiae of preparation, is like what's going to happen in the biggest moments. How do you make the best decisions? And your best decision is actually focusing on the plan and the process. So then you can execute the outcome that you want. In spite of thoughts, emotions, or not in spite of them, actually. It's an acceptance of them, which is sort of the acceptance and commitment part of that particular therapy, but is to accept that you will have the positive, you will have the negative thoughts, and you need to commit to the action. Because everyone is human, and unless you're enlightened, unless you're Buddha, you haven't figured out how to disconnect completely from your thoughts. So
that's so interesting. I'm going to share something that I didn't intend to, but I'm going to do it now.
Awesome.
And talking about the app stuff, I wrote this thing a long time ago when I was young and silly, but called the Playbook, right? And it was just something that if you saw someone you liked in a bar, liked the look of, it was just something to say to them. So you could go click on it and go bar, and it would have all these things for you to say, right? And the idea of that was not that the line or anything is that powerful within itself, but it gives you a plan to execute. Yeah. And that's sort of the feedback I got from that at the time, was that it was a very similar thing. Like, if you've already thought about it and you just, okay, if I see someone I'm interested in, I can just say this, and it takes it from a creative task to a mechanical task as well. You just have to go through the motions then. You don't actually have to come up with something.
Yep.
You've already come up with something.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that's probably along the same lines, but that's what comes to mind when you explain all this stuff.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, that's bang on. Yeah, you've got an actionable plan that actually moves you, and the piece is that it moves you towards. And so you might scroll down those lists and say, okay, well, there's 8 of these that I don't want, and 2 that I might actually use because that's consistent with me.
Yep.
But that's going to actually move me towards my goal of, finding a lifelong partner. If that's a part of what you view as success, and that's not for everyone. Don't get me wrong. So, but equally, not having it there, your behaviour of avoiding that is actually moving you away from that end game, if that is your end game. So it's sort of this towards and away behaviour, and so the plan is crucial. Yeah. So that's an awesome example.
Right. Well, on that note, we'll finish there. But that was fascinating, Toby. Thanks for being part of it.
No, thanks, Jack. Awesome fun.
Where's some places we can find you if people want to get in touch or want to reach out or learn more about what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So bluewiremedia.com.Au is our home. I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
And Twitter.
Sure.
At Toby_Jenkins.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I love talking this stuff. So thanks, Jack. It's been fun.
No worries. I'll link to all that in the show notes. Toby Jenkins, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Be The Push podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. I appreciate your company and look forward to talking to you again soon.